All right, what's up, everybody? Happy Sunday night. Apologies for being late. We'll just be on for a quick hour just to kind of recap the week ahead in the financial markets, and then we'll call it a night. But here we are again, 57th Street, Madison Avenue. Hopefully everybody had a wonderful weekend. Pretty eventful weekend, too. Not only, had some decent action in some crypto markets, but also we had some major sporting events. I'm not sure if anybody else watched the Mike Tyson fight. I actually took the night off to watch that. I thought it was pretty entertaining. I enjoyed it. And then you had the massive, I believe it was UFC 309 with John Jones. President Trump was in New York at Madison Square Garden with Elon Musk. So it was pretty cool weekend. I enjoyed it. Hopefully everybody had a good one. Anyway, we'll get started in a minute. Thanks so much for joining very late at night. Hope you all had a good weekend. This is the temporary Louis Vuitton store. Hey, RS says UFC was crazy with the John Jones dance. What's up, RS? Thanks for joining us. Thank you for your donation. It was a pretty good fight, too. It was just a really exciting event. I'm not a big fight fan, to be honest, but, John Jones is a huge name. And, the way he won that fight was crazy with that spinning back kick. It was wild. Packed house in front of Madison Square Garden. Anyway, 57th Street, looking at the beautiful Tiffany building as well as the Crown building. This is where the Amman, New York sits. But before we get started, we'll just do the quick audio and visual check. So if you guys can hear us, and if we're streaming in 1080p, just go ahead and leave a thumbs up in the chat, and we'll go ahead and get started. We'll check out some of the stores here with all the Christmas decorations up. Again, this is the new Louis Vuitton store. Doc 7, Michael is here. WS Bro 93. Tyson fight is very bullish. I enjoyed that fight. Now, there were a lot of people saying, I wasted a ton of time watching the fight. It was underwhelming. But, Mike Tyson is a 60-year-old man, quite literally. So I wasn't expecting some explosive battle, right? It was just really awesome to see him in the ring again. Now, I didn't even know. I guess he fought somebody else before fighting Jake Paul, maybe like a year ago or something. I didn't even know. I thought the last time that he fought was way back in the day, in 2004, in which case I wasn't even old enough to remember any of that. So I thought it was awesome. I had a good time watching it. And it's not like anybody had to pay for it either. You didn't have to buy a pay-per-view. It was pretty much free. If you have a Netflix account, which pretty much everybody does, you had access to watch it. So I enjoyed it. What do you guys think? Yeah, DC322 says he went the distance. Paul landed more punches than Tyson. Now, another thing I didn't realize, apparently Mike Tyson almost died like 6 to 8 months before the fight, which is crazy. So not only is he's 60 years old, he's recovering from a bunch of blood transfusions and all that. Anyway, I had a good weekend. Hopefully you guys did as well. We'll go ahead and get started, though. So good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Walks on Wall Street on this very late night Sunday issue of the Markets a Look Ahead stream. We're going to be walking down Fifth Avenue. Only going to be on for about an hour since it's so late. It's roughly 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Almost knocking on the door of 11 p.m. But next week is going to be a pretty busy week on Wall Street. Now, we have some good news and some I guess not so good news. The good news is, the vast majority of earnings season is behind us now. It's in the rearview mirror. The only company, I should say, really the only company that matters, right, out of the big mega cap tech stocks that are set to report earnings is NVIDIA. I believe they are on the chopping block to report on Wednesday. And NVIDIA is a multi-trillion-dollar company, meaning it makes up a massive, massive portion in the S&P 500. So if they have a miss, if Jensen and team misses earnings, this could be some significant volatility in the market. I think they're going to report a better than expected quarter. Just to put on everybody's radar, the cover story in Barron's this weekend was pretty good. It was very, very good. It was all about NVIDIA, but it really wasn't talking about the stock very much, right? It was talking about the company culture, how Jensen built the company. So more of a business-focused article. Maybe those of you who are working at a big company now, or maybe you're a CEO of a company, maybe you're trying to build a company, you're in startup or founder mode. That's a really good article to read. So the cover story of Barron's this weekend was amazing. It was all about how hardcore Jensen is and how he built his company. It was pretty impressive stuff. And the importance of whiteboarding, right? Having a whiteboard in the office, not just, for many of the consultants in the room. You ever worked at a big consulting firm? Everything, you could hide behind these pretty slide decks. Microsoft, PowerPoint, and Excel, making things look really pretty. But Jensen, he's a big believer in, getting up in front of the group, in front of the audience, showing your work live in real time so you can get that instant feedback, kind of what he likes to call whiteboarding. And I thought that article was pretty relevant to today's standards, particularly as we're having this big push towards work from home, and now you're seeing this shift 180 in the opposite direction with many Fortune 500 CEOs saying, okay, look, we're going to walk back this work from home stuff. You're going to be back in the office 5 days a week. So just check out that cover story of Investors Business Daily. I think you will enjoy it. We're outside of the St. Regis Hotel as well as the Peninsula. So not only is NVIDIA reporting this week, we're going to have a cybersecurity giant which I believe is the leader in the cybersecurity space. They're also going to be reporting earnings. Palo Alto Networks, ticker symbol PANW, will be reporting earnings this week as well. And last but not least, we're going to hear from some retailers, particularly Target, ticker symbol TGT. Very interested to pay attention to that Target call. Maybe they'll touch on some retail, shrinkage numbers, as a lot of these organizations and corporations have been dealing with, very organized retail theft. We'll see if they have any change in strategy now that we have a new and incoming administration. Now, some after-hours stock movements. I think Palantir is up again, maybe like 3 or 4% after hours. This comes after the CEO of the company on Friday sold, I believe, over $400 million worth of stock. Now, they're claiming that it was planned. He was going to sell it all along, but it is notable. However, I would like to note that I usually put more weighting on insider buys as opposed to insider sales. Now, the reason why I do that is the following. There's 1,000 reasons why you would sell a stock, but there's only really one reason that you would buy it, right? The only reason why you would buy your own stock in your own company is you think it's undervalued and it's going to outperform over the long term. There's hundreds of reasons why you could sell a stock. One of which could be you think the company is overvalued, you think the market is a little bit frothy, there's some irrational exuberance there, but oftentimes it's just, liquidity planning. Maybe you want to make a big charitable donation, maybe you want to buy a super yacht, maybe you want to build another house, maybe you want raise liquidity to invest in another company or start another company. There's a million different things that could happen. So it's going to be a packed week, busy week, and we didn't even touch on really any of the main data that's coming out in terms of the housing market. We're going to hear from NAR, the National Association of Realtors, as they release their existing home sales data. It's going to be interesting to see really what comes about of that, being that since the Federal Reserve cut interest rates, mortgage rates actually went up. So I think you're going to see further deterioration in existing home sales. But on the back end, in a few months, you're probably going to see existing home sales and just broader home sales pick up, because anecdotally in the market, after the presidential election, there's been a ton of activity in the housing market. This is St. Thomas Church. Looks beautiful here. All right, let's see who we have in the chat. I see Reggie44. What's going on? Aldo, cheers. Robbie says hello, everybody, and Tom. Paul Yost says you're looking forward to NVIDIA's earnings. I am as well. That'll be on Wednesday. Rocket Mob says, wow, seems like just yesterday Bitcoin was 9K. Indeed it does. And now it is 90K. Throw a few extra zeros over there. Now, speaking of Bitcoin, to Rocket Mob's point, did anybody have some time this weekend to kind of go over some of the recent 13F filings from some of the major funds? Anybody have any time to do that? Well, I had a little bit of time. Not a lot, but a little bit. And I always pay close attention to our good friend Paul Tudor Jones and Stanley Druckenmiller. We talk about those two investors quite often. Now, Paul Tudor Jones, on his most recent 13F, just disclosed an increased stake in IBIT. Now, IBIT, or IBIT, is the BlackRock iShares Bitcoin ETF trust. So Paul Tudor Jones is really one of those macro, trend traders. I would like to call it an intermediate term trend trader. And I've pretty much based my investment style off of him. I mean, you could pretty much, I would like to be a self-described Paul Tudor Jones, Stan Druckenmiller, Jim Ropel ripoff, essentially, right? Essentially just like a copy-paste of their trading ideology. That's kind of how I operate. So it's interesting to see the increase in the position that Paul Tudor Jones now has in IBIT. I believe it's about $184 or $185 million position. And if you notice, if you go back in time, he's increased that position, right? So he ladders into his positions as the particular, commodity or asset or property or whatever that he's trading goes up. That's kind of his style. If the market is telling him that his thesis is correct, he'll ladder up into the position. So pretty interesting stuff. Now, this looks pretty cool. We're currently on the corner of West 52nd Street and 5th Avenue. This is the Ferragamo store here, but all lit up in the Christmas lights, holiday lights, is the Cartier store. Looks pretty good. Hey, what's up, Alan? Good to see you. Let's see who else we have. Darfred, cheers. DC, welcome. Daytona Gal. I see Dale. Stan Harbor, a collector's dream. Joel PM says, Tom, rumor is NVIDIA's Blackwells are overheating. SMCI is a market leader in liquid cooling. There's also another company that I was reading about today in Barron's that's a leader in cooling technology for data centers. I just forget the name of it. My brain is a little bit fried. Let's see who else we got. Alan says it's still 2 months out, but I'm really excited to see Discover's reporting. where the meat is to see how the economy is doing overall. Well, financial earnings were a bright spot this earnings season. All of the major banks, I think, reported pretty solid numbers. The only kind of rockiness that you see in the financial sector is those very small regional banks. But my overall take on the regional banking sector in the United States is, unfortunately, it'll be continuously consolidated, and Jamie Dimon will probably just consume those companies over the long term, I think. Maybe it won't be quite like how you have it in Canada, where there's like a handful of very big banks. I don't think we'll ever get to that point, but I think the trend is very clear in which way. Hey, Larry Adams, good to see you. Now, if you guys are interested in AI, data centers, cloud computing, you really got to take some time out of your week or what's ever left of your weekend and really read through a couple of the main articles this week in Barron's, right? That really just goes to explain, where the ecosystem for cloud computing, data center, AI is shifting, right? And just the, thinking about a total addressable market of, let's say NVIDIA's TAM, right? Based upon NVIDIA's largest customers, like Meta, Amazon, Microsoft, all the big, cloud computing companies. The CapEx spending for 2025 is really going to balloon. Microsoft is going to be spending probably 2 times as much as they spent this year on chips and data center. Same thing can be said with Zuckerberg over at Meta. So there is some pretty hefty runway here. And that, leads me to believe that's probably one of the many reasons why NVIDIA trades for such a frothy valuation, just because there's so much juice left in the tank for spending or CapEx at some of the biggest tech companies. So check it out. It was an interesting read. I was tweeting today, or posting today on X, if you follow us on the X platform, at Walks Wall Street, some of the most notable excerpts from those articles that I read today. I posted them on X just so I can kind of go back and review them later in time. But it's pretty exciting stuff. Pretty exciting stuff. Hey, Sunshine NYC, what's going on? Leslie is here. Cheers. Rocket Mom says Tesla is also a huge customer of NVIDIA. Well, Elon Musk in general is a big customer of NVIDIA, particularly with Elon's new venture, XAI. I believe 2024 total spending was in the several billions of dollars. I think they have about 100,000 GPUs from NVIDIA. Elon says he's probably going to double that next year. So, the race of it, I guess we could think about it like this, right? To Doc Seven's point. We don't know who's going to be the winner in AI, but we know that everybody's trying really, really hard. So is it going to be Meta? Is it going to be XAI with Elon Musk? Is it going to be Microsoft? Is it going to be any of these big tech giants? My answer is I don't know, but I equate it to like the gold rush, right? Not everybody made money mining gold in the gold rush, but the people selling the pickaxes and the wheelbarrows and the shovels made a lot of money during the gold rush, right? NVIDIA is essentially selling the backbone, the infrastructure for entrepreneurs to go out and build the best AI. That's kind of how I think about it. So, do you want to own the infrastructure plays? Or if you think you're smart enough to bet on the horse, who knows? But the good news is, right, speaking generally, most people don't own individual stocks, right? They're not individual stock pickers, but most people have some sort of exposure to the S&P 500. And Nvidia, Microsoft, Meta, Tesla, and the like are all in the top 10 in terms of market cap for the S&P 500. So inadvertently, all but, we all have exposure. Guys, this is Rockefeller Center. You're looking at the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree right here, as well as the beautiful ice skating rink. Yeah, middle-aged grind, says Levi Strauss sold jeans during the gold rush. Hike Scenic, what's up? Also, cryptocurrency mining is a huge portion of a business from some of these chip companies. So if we kind of skate to where the puck is going, so to speak, I think we're entering inning one of a new bull cycle for Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. That also acts as a massive tailwind for companies like Nvidia. Real quick, just a quick reminder, we did send out our free investing newsletter on Thursday, where we talked a lot about these big explosive trends for 2025. So if you did not receive that, you could just go ahead and scan the QR code on your screen, punch in your email, and it'll bring you to our Substack. We publish all of our market research for free for the audience here of Walks on Wall Street every other Thursday. So we just sent it out Thursday afternoon, and we covered a ton of ground there. So as we go into this week, as we go into NVIDIA's earnings, as we go into Palo Alto's earnings, I think it's pretty good refresher to kind of read that over, check it out over there at the Behind the Street newsletter. Once again, you could type !news, NEWS in the chat, or you could just scan the QR code. I just want to get one more look at the Rockefeller Center tree. Hawaii, good to see you. What's going on? Hopefully you had a good weekend. Hey, what's up, Soho Joe? Welcome. Peter says Verti might be the firm that provides cooling technology to the data centers. That is it, yes. And there was a big cover story. Well, not a cover story. There was like a big article about it in Barron's this week. Let's see if we can go back over to 6th Avenue without us buffering. We'll see. Hey, what's up, Cameron from Denver, Colorado? Welcome. Stephen Bates is Hawaii. Oh, you're talking about the fight. I actually enjoyed the fight. Yeah, I saw that on X. Everybody was complaining about the buffering. I didn't get any buffering. I'm just being quite honest. I didn't really get a chance to watch the fights before Tyson and Jake Paul, but I did take the night off to watch Mike Tyson and Jake Paul specifically, and I didn't have any issues. I didn't have any issues at all. Netflix is a stock that I initiated coverage on. We wrote about it in the newsletter, breaking into new all-time record highs after a brutal 1.5-year bear market, but that's very characteristic of the stock, right? Netflix goes through these cyclical bear markets, and now that the CEO has really cracked down on the password sharing, the pandemic is out of the way, because you got to understand, what I believe is that there was a little bit of a lag with Netflix, because it's very hard to shoot new video and new content for Netflix when there's a pandemic, right? So you kind of had a gap in content. Now that things are kind of rocking and rolling 100%, you're going to have a lot of interesting new content down the pike. And I think the most record-breaking new piece of content of all time, if you look at the ratings, whether you like the fight or not like the fight, whether you like Jake Paul or not like Jake Paul, that fight brought in so much viewership, shattered so many records. Now, granted, obviously, it's not a pay-per-view buy, right? So the ease of access to watch is everybody. I wasn't going to spend $100 to watch the fight, but I do have Netflix, right? Or I have Netflix, so I was going to watch. Was going to watch the fight. Broke records. So if I had to make a little bit of a prediction, I think Netflix is probably going to put on more of these events. You're going to see more live sporting events, particularly in the fight business, on Netflix. And I am very, very bullish Netflix going forward. And I think after that earnings gap, or I should say after that big gap up on their earnings, that stock is up and away. It'll probably ride like the 10-day moving average all the way up. Mark Francis 076 is my Netflix was buffering. Maybe it was my carrier. Yeah, I mean, I honestly had none when Tyson was fighting. Town announces that fight was staged like Mayweather and McGregor. Never paid for something like that. I watched it on replay. That draw was all on Tyson. Now, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But, I mean, the way I think about it is like this. I wasn't expecting, right, an explosive Mike Tyson. Now, I know nothing about the fight business, and I know nothing about fighting, so take with what I'm going to say with a grain of salt. I just wanted to see him in the boxing ring, right? I was born in 1995. I think his last fight, I did some Google searching, was in 2004. So I didn't even know the name Mike Tyson in 2004. I don't even know what I was doing in 2004. I was probably in middle school or something. So to see him in the ring, to me, was just super entertaining. I wasn't expecting him to, go in there and do backflips. But to see a 60-year-old Mike Tyson get in a boxing ring, I was entertained. I was thoroughly entertained. Now, was Jake Paul going to go all out and injure him and, knock him out? Probably not. So I have a lot of respect to him that he didn't, just like start teeing off on the guy. It was a cool thing to watch in my view. Yeah, DC322 says I grew up watching the Tyson fight. He knocked people out hard. Paul Yost says I've been watching Tyson since the early 1980s. Sunshine After Rain says all entertainment. Now, this weekend was huge for the fight business and for entertainment. President Trump and Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy, pretty much the entire Trump transition team, showed up to UFC 309 at Madison Square Garden. Again, I'm not really big into the fight business, but I do know who John Jones is, and that fight was incredibly entertaining. Incredibly entertaining. That spinning back kick just was like brutal. If you replayed it on like slow motion, some of the pictures on X, it literally looks like John Jones' foot went through the guy's body. Insane. So, but hey, maybe that could be a new business driver for Netflix. I'll rephrase that. Not maybe, it could be, it is going to be. After the numbers that Tyson and Jake Paul put up, Netflix is probably going to be on the phones on Monday talking to Jake Paul and his people saying, look, what other fight could be this massive that people are going to want to see? Because again, whether you like the guy or not, he's a controversial guy. He draws a massive audience. That's undeniable after the viewership numbers that we saw from Netflix. So, why is this Tyson's interviews were the most entertaining? Yeah, I did. Chris, did you see the live stream of the fight? Had 7 million views on X. Yeah, I believe it was that football player, because everybody was complaining about how poor the quality was on Netflix. So this football player just comes up and streams on X, and he has 7 million concurrent viewers, or 7 million total viewers on X. So Mike Tyson draws a massive crowd. This kid, Jake Paul, draws a massive crowd, and I don't think this will be the last business partnership with Netflix. And I think Netflix is going to make a lot more money off of these events. It also is further proof that streaming is the future, and streaming live. Yes, everybody is complaining about the quality of the picture, that it was buffering and all that. But this was the first major live boxing event that you could have streamed live on Netflix. I can guarantee that that'll never happen again. And there's going to be more live sporting events streamed on Netflix. And maybe Netflix will even make a whole other division. You know, instead of $7.99 a month for Netflix or however much it is, maybe if you want to watch live boxing or live sports, it's going to be $20 a month. So there's massive growth potential there. Huge. Anyone disagree with that? Agree? I'm just trying to, think about this from a business standpoint. I did watch the fight and it was entertaining, but what was really going through my mind the entire fight was this is going to be a whole new can of worms for Netflix. Huge. Let's try to make a right and go this way. Sunshine After Rain says, personal, Jake Paul's brother Logan is a better fighter. Well, I think he's much taller and I think he's much stronger. Logan Paul. He's like 6'5" or something, and he's currently with the WWE, which obviously is not fighting, but it's like entertainment. But still, I mean, that is some serious stuff. Someone says the cheapest plan is already $15.49 a month. DC322 says Netflix will do more live sports. Emma says Netflix is doing the NFL games on Christmas. Wow. Mark Francis says, I think the Netflix is already streaming a few NFL games. Raj Rupani says, Tom, technically not the first sporting event. Rafa and Carlos played a tennis match in February. See, I didn't even know that. On Netflix they did? I guess at the end of the day, it all comes down to the promotion of it. And, if I had to, let's say if I worked for Netflix, right? I know that Rafa is a huge name, but to make money in the business, it's like you got to bet on the person who's the biggest promoter and the biggest marketer, right? Jake Paul's not the best fighter, but the guy is like a master marketer. The way that they marketed this fight with Mike Tyson, so much hype, and his brother does the same thing, right? So for Netflix to maybe even have an exclusive partnership with those two, putting on more events, you never know. I was talking to my friend today. Obviously Dana White and the UFC runs an incredible operation, an unbelievable operation, but I don't think Dana White should be so dismissive of this kid. Right, I know that they're kind of in competition, but look, never kind of underestimate a disruptor. And, maybe instead of kind of being so dismissive of this Jake Paul guy, maybe find a way to work together and have him elevate the UFC brand or something. I don't know, I'm not in the fight business, but I just always look out for disruptors. You never know. Now, kind of back to the markets. Now, 13F filings recently came out. We briefly spoke about how, I usually like to look at the main funds that kind of match my trading style. And it was very, very interesting that Paul Tudor Jones of Tudor Investment Corp increased his stake in IBIT. Now, if you think, a 13F is a look back, so that means the vast majority of that position, right, assuming, we're looking backwards in time, was all throughout that massive handle in Bitcoin, right, ranging from, I'd say, $58,000 to right around $72,000, which was the top tick of that handle. And those massive cup with handle bases are perfect for those global macro traders like Paul Tudor Jones and Stanley Druckenmiller. That's what they live and breathe off of, right? We know that Paul Tudor Jones was in the big gold breakout over 1900 through that massive cup with handle breakout. We now know that he laddered up and in to his Bitcoin position via IBIT, which is the BlackRock iShares Bitcoin Trust. And now he has about $185 million position there. So something to watch. Also, after MicroStrategy's ticker symbol S, I think it's MSTR, MicroStrategy's earnings report, they are going to issue more debt to raise money to go ahead and acquire and buy more Bitcoin. So I would not be surprised if tomorrow morning you see, across Reuters or across Bloomberg, that MicroStrategy has announced that today they're going to be in the market probably buying, 15,000 to 25,000 additional Bitcoin. So I think the race is on. I believe that you're going to see more and more companies kind of adopting the Bitcoin treasury strategy. And who knows, maybe when President Trump is in office, when he's inaugurated, maybe they will establish some sort of United States official Bitcoin treasury. Who knows? Now, the reason why I say that, we're going to kind of blow through some topics here fast because it is late. Howard Lutnick, CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald. If you don't know who he is, you probably should. Unbelievable guy, just an unbelievable businessman. Lost more than, I would say, 60% of his company on September 11th during the horrible 9/11 terrorist attacks. The planes literally struck right where his office was, the top, I think, 4 or so floors of the World Trade Center. Decided not to close up shop and close the company. Decided to say, look, we're going to hunker down here. We're going to rebuild the business. Oh, and by the way, when we rebuild the business, we're going to give 25% of our profits back to our employees' families who lost family members on 9/11. So he's a master operator. What he says he will do, he has a proven track record of doing. He has a massive multi-billion-dollar business in terms of, the trading business, execution business, the investment banking business over at Cantor, and he is part of Trump's transition team, right? So regardless if you like Bitcoin or crypto or not, right? That's not the point. The point is, Wayne Gretzky, skate to where the puck is going. If you have Howard Lutnick on the Trump transition team, meeting with the Trump team, okay, and this guy has a vested interest in Bitcoin, in digital currencies, if you don't think that he's going to be in Trump's ear talking about establishing some sort of official Bitcoin treasury for the U.S., I think you're out of your mind. The answer is yes, it's going to happen. So, look, I'm not saying go buy it. I'm just saying look into it, and I'm saying pay attention. You have all the biggest global macro guys, okay? Paul Tudor Jones, Stan Druckenmiller. They're saying it's the fastest horse in the race. The institutions are in. Now Larry Fink has a vested interest to market his product. Remember, now that these spot Bitcoin ETFs have been approved, these essentially meaning if I go and buy a share of IBIT, BlackRock, the trading desk, has to go back into the marketplace, turn around, and go buy the physical Bitcoin to back it 1-to-1. It's not the same when you had futures ETFs, right? This is actually spot Bitcoin ETF. So if I buy $1 million worth of IBIT, the trading desk over at BlackRock has to go and match that and go into the market and buy Bitcoin, right? So this is going to be a massive on-ramp for institutions, hedge funders, to legally, safely, and in a compliant way, which is the most important term here, the most compliant way to get exposure to Bitcoin. So this is going to be quite interesting. Now, one of the, I should say, the biggest problems, and again, we're blowing through these topics because it's going to be a short stream. The regulatory environment that was set by current SEC chair Gary Gensler has made it very, very difficult in terms of custody. So banks really can't custody Bitcoin because they have to, essentially with the regulations now, and we wrote a whole article on this, they have to keep it on the balance sheet, right? Where everything else, if a bank wants to custody for customers or clients, they don't have to. So I think that SOB regulation, I believe it's SOB 121, that's going to go away. That's my prediction. And when that goes away, that essentially gives the green light to major banks that, hey, I can custody Bitcoin for customers, which means I can build products and services around Bitcoin. I can make Bitcoin-backed secure loans. I can collateralize the asset. And it doesn't matter if the CEO of JP Morgan Chase, Jamie Dimon, doesn't like it. He's a banker, and he wants his bank to be number one. So if his bank can custody Bitcoin, he is going to custody it for his customers. He's going to pay yield on it. He's going to issue loans on it or issue debt on it, and he's going to be willing to collateralize it for customers. So this could be very big. Very, very big. If you want to know a little bit more in detail, I did write a rather compelling article. I published this Thursday. I emailed it to everybody. If you want to read it, you can scan the QR code on your screen, punch in your email, or just type !news, NEWS, in the chat, and it'll drop the link to our Substack. And we publish all of our research on our Substack every other Thursday. Right now we are in Times Square. Welcome to Times Square. Lenise, some folks are voicing concerns that Trump will not be able to see the full 4 years. I mean, I don't know anything about that. Maybe he won't. Who knows? Hey, what's up, Patrice? What's going on? Someone says Vance has to become president. Will this make a difference on Wall Street? I say no, and I would even take it a step further. Let me just get the QR code out of the way. It is of my belief that people put too much weighting on who is president as it relates to market performance. I honestly don't think there's much of a correlation there, right? Look at all the people that have said, Biden and Harris are going to crash the U.S. economy and the stock market is going to tank. I mean, even President Trump has said this, right? And I'm more of a Trump person, right? If you ask me who do I prefer, Trump or Harris, I would say Trump. But Trump has said repeatedly that, Biden's going to crash the U.S. economy, is going to crash the markets. But this has been one of the strongest markets ever that I've ever invested through, that I've ever traded through. The clear tell, right? Yeah, it's a regulatory environment. Is it taxes? I would say to a lesser extent. It's mainly liquidity and market cycles, right? The United States, right? Regardless of what you read in the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal, the hyperbolic rhetoric saying that, one side or the other is going to be the end of capitalism. It's just not true, right? If you compare the regulatory structure, or just, guys, the United States Constitution, okay? individual freedoms, individual property rights, liberty and justice for all. That is not the norm around the world, if you haven't noticed, okay? So that is really the magic elixir of this beautiful, almost perfect system we call U.S. capitalism. It allows for the free creation of capital, and that's why, by and large, the best businesses and the best companies in the world have been created here. We are a brain drain on the rest of the world. We have the freest and fairest markets, and we have the best intellectual capital, intellectual property here in the United States. That doesn't change because you have Democrats in office or Republicans in office, right? The machine that is the U.S. economy is so massive that it's bigger than one or two people, right? I think one of the main things, again, being liquidity, a favorable monetary environment, right? We talked about a decade of ZIRP, zero interest rate policy, the Fed expanding the size of their balance sheet. That is a bigger driver than who the president is, right? Yes, fiscal spending has a lot to do with it, but if you look back throughout recent history, both Democrats and Republicans, mind you, blew it out of the water when it came to fiscal spending, right? If we're just being honest with each other. The Trump administration spent a ridiculous amount of money, juiced the economy. Biden administration came in and continued with the Trump administration policy of massive, massive spending, and that did really, really well for our economy. So, I mean, if we're just being honest, so I don't really believe the narratives, the political narratives that if we elect this person or that person, the market's going to tank. The markets don't care. The biggest thing is earnings, the earnings. If corporate earnings are expanding year over year, generally speaking, over time, the market is going to have a random walk and a trend higher. If corporate earnings decelerate and decline, well, then you're going to go through probably a contraction and a bear market. So GDP growth, is the overall U.S. economy growing, yes or no? If the answer is yes, then most of the time that means corporate earnings are probably exploding to the upside as well. And under the current administration, right? Trump's not president yet. Corporate profits and corporate earnings margins hit new all-time record highs. So I would not focus on the political banter. I would focus on GDP growth, I would focus on the earnings growth, and I would focus on global liquidity. So now that the election is over, I think we could turn off the news, we could turn off Fox News, we could turn off CNN. I mean, CNN was always turned off. I mean, the ratings are so horrible. The ratings at CNN are so piss poor, it's embarrassing. Half the company's probably going to be fired. That's beside the point. The point is, guys, we could turn off the news, the election's over, focus on GDP growth, focus on earnings growth, and I think the American machine is going to continue to go on. Are we going to have more bear markets? Yes. Are we going to have more periods of economic contraction? Yes. But are we going to have more ferocious bull markets like the one we are in right now? The answer is unequivocally yes. And it's been like that since the turn of time. That's just honest. It's been like that since the turn of time. We've had Republican presidents, we've had Democrat presidents, we've had Bill Clinton, we've had the Bushes, we've had President Barack Obama, and America has been just fine. Okay, we had President Trump once, America was just fine. Things are going to be all right. That's my view. This is the Kipton Theta Hotel. I do have to head back up. I don't want to be out too late. Reggie44 says MSNBC lost half their audience. Now, as an additional bull thesis for Netflix, I think if Netflix can somehow get into the news business, right, maybe hiring talent where there could be, streaming broadcast hosts on Netflix, I think that would crush. I am super, super bullish on Netflix. I have been. And look, mainstream legacy media is dying. It's all going to streaming. And I think those disruptive companies like Netflix, which they are probably already, getting themselves in place. Netflix can have a really, really crazy and mean media business that is very, very fast, efficient, and swift. Perhaps we'll see that coming down the pike. You never know. And it's not just CNN, it's not just MSNBC, it's Fox News too. I mean, I would bet that most of the audience who's watching this stream, over the years, you've probably less and less so have been going to, cable news to get your information, right? It's overwhelmingly, platforms like X, formerly known as Twitter, Meta, things like that. Different distribution mediums. Connor says Netflix dropped the ball on the fight on Friday. Yeah, I heard there was a lot of buffering, but at least we know it's proof of concept, right? How many people watched the Jake Paul Tyson fight? Like 65 million people? Black Ribbon says the streaming companies are at war. That's true. The streaming companies are at war while legacy media, is already on the floor of the battlefield bleeding out, right? And I'm not saying that in like a mean way. Guys, this has been happening since the turn of time. This is just new technology, new distribution mediums, right? The distribution of news since the beginning of time has changed, right? Remember all the way back in the day where we would write little tiny notes on scrolls and then we would give it to a falcon and it would fly it somewhere in the storybooks? Remember we used to have a postal service where we would write down physical letters and then we would put it in the back of a horse and buggy and it would take 2 weeks or 3 weeks to go 300 miles. Nobody does that anymore. Then we have email, new distribution medium. Then we have video. Then we have broadcast. Remember radio? Remember everyone would tune into, radio. Everybody would crowd around and listen to, like a big fight. And they would be broadcasting it over the radio and it was all staticky. Now we're going to have new distribution mediums. And I think as investors, we need to skate to where the puck is going and go to the new wave. And the good thing is the market really telegraphs where that is, because us consumers, we gravitate to ease of use and better products and services. Hey, what's up, Richard? Robert V is here too. Good to see you. Yeah, Sunshine After Rain, Wells Fargo used horse and carriage in the 1800s. Sunshine After Rain, if we want to kind of talk more specifically about the investment business, right? We always talk about the days of Jesse Livermore. He used to trade stocks by essentially reading the tape, so to speak. Reading the tape. So there were no Robinhood applications. You would get a price quote printed in ink on a tape, the ticker tape. And if you want to go even before that, you can go to some of the bucket shops where they would get a quote like every 10 minutes, right? And then the stock jockey would write the quote of the stock in chalk on the chalkboard. Right now we have instantaneous quotes, live quotes 24/7, 365. So they're just new ways of doing things, and we want to be on the side of technology. right, let's walk up 8th Avenue, and then we'll get back on 57th. I gotta head back over. That's true. Rocket Mob says Bitcoin on the Lightning Network will do away with Western Union and MoneyGram. That's another really, really good point. Just think about the remittance market, right? There's been a lot of talk this election cycle about, what's it called, immigration? Let's take it a step further. How big do you guys think the remittance market is globally? Now, for those of you who don't know, essentially a remittance is, people will come, and not just the US, this is globally, but, immigrants making money in one country and then sending the money back to their home country. The cost of doing that is pretty much zero now, right? Western Union, ridiculous fees, MoneyGram, ridiculous fees. In theory, you could send $100 million, $1 billion worth of Bitcoin halfway across the world for probably less than $1, right? So that is the new money. Oh, and you don't have to wait for any wire to clear. You don't have to pick up the phone and call Jamie Dimon and have him grill you and ask you 20 million different questions. Hey, why are you sending this money to where you're sending it to? What's your social security number? It's permissionless, right? Unconfiscatable, permissionless money. You could send it to whoever you want, 24/7, 365. The network always runs. TikTok, next block. It's huge. Anyway, if you guys are enjoying the stream tonight, feel free to leave a like on the video. Click the subscribe button if you're new. Joel PM says money that's made here should stay here. Well, that's not my argument to be had. All I'm saying is, the remittance market is huge, and there's a better way to do it. I know Dream Machines says, I'm loving how the city is looking right now. The contrast and shadows are awesome. Yeah, the city looks awesome at night. It really, really does. And it's not too windy. I thought it was going to be a little bit more windy and cold. It's actually quite nice. I can't even believe how amazing the weather has been in New York City so far this fall. It's unbelievable. It's almost like an extended summer. Reggie44 says, I hope you younger people are prepared if we have a Black Monday type event. I lived through over 22% down in one day. Well, if you want to, crunch the numbers and put our quantitative hats on, I actually did this research already. And I think I published it in one of our earlier newsletters. Recent markets, Gen Z and millennials, we've gone through back to back severe drawdowns and bear markets. It's just the indexes have generally hit it. But if you want to talk about, S&P 500 declines, we can. Look at the 2018 waterfall style sell-off, monster bear market. I remember trading that. Literally the market put in a bottom on Christmas Eve. I was on the Long Island Railroad and I was like, wait, S&P's down how much? Then you had a 2020 global monumental pandemic where the S&P 500 declined 33% in 2 weeks, right? Many individual stocks down 90% plus. Then you had the 2021, I should say the latter half of 2021 through 2022, brutal bear market. Indices were down, 30%, Maybe the NASDAQ was down a little bit more. But individual tech stocks, everything was down 90% plus. Right? If you go to like the ARK ETF, ticker symbol ARKK, that thing was down like 92% peak to trough. Individual stocks, complete washout. So I would argue, the early millennial Gen Z traders have experienced their unbelievable, overwhelming fair share of, complete washouts, right? And if you take it a step further, and if you look at the type of stocks generally that younger people have owned, it were the stocks that were the ultra high beta, tech stocks like the Zooms, the Pelotons throughout 2021. Those were the stocks that were down 97, 98%. They also overwhelmingly owned a lot of the SPACs that went to zero. So if you really, really want to, say it like, hey, a lot of these millennials, Gen Zs, could never, you guys have never seen a 2008. No, we've seen multiple on a magnitude like 5x, if you want to talk about overall wealth destruction. I would even go a further step and say the destruction from the 2021 blow-off top in tech stocks, peak to trough, did more damage, way more damage than the 2000 dot-com bubble. Way more. It's funny, now that we're talking about, those stocks getting crushed, if you look at a ticker symbol of ARK, ARKK, and I actually wrote a few articles about this, it looks like it's going through a reaccumulation pattern right now, which is very reminiscent of traditional Wyckoff theory, right? Richard Wyckoff, if you haven't heard of the gentleman, pioneered the Wyckoff theory. You could also couple it with Dow theory, where you have a composite operator in the market. Right, that composite operator accumulates large swaths of positions, which takes, months, weeks, years, sometimes a decade. Then you have a big markup, and you have a big distribution at the top. I'd go out on a limb and say we're probably in inning one of a small markup in some of these beaten down names. Like, you could find it. I posted a bunch about it on X. It's better to see it as a visual. Especially if rates are actually going to come down. Reggie44 says, I agree with Tom. People are thinking Bitcoin won't crash again. Don't be too sure. I've witnessed Bitcoin go to 500, have a blow-off top to 1,000. I witnessed Bitcoin in the 2017 bull market blow off to 19,977, crash all the way down to 4,500. Bitcoin has statistically a higher historical annual rate of return than the S&P, but 5x the vol, if that makes sense. So if you can stomach 5x volatility of the S&P, you're going to get superior returns over time. So I can almost guarantee, it's almost a guarantee, that you'll have another 60% correction in Bitcoin, right? When Bitcoin is trading at 500K, you'll see a correction down to, $250,000. Hey, Major Menace is, how do you pay bills with Bitcoin, Tom? I would never pay my bills with Bitcoin. But I think in Miami-Dade, or depending on which, I think many counties will allow you to pay property taxes with Bitcoin, which I think is a really good play for your local municipality. But I would never pay any of my bills with Bitcoin. I would give you my garbage fiat. I want to offload my trash, my filth, and I want to keep, the good assets. Right? I want to accumulate assets over time, like real estate, like indestructible great American companies that spit off massive amounts of free cash flow. I want to hoard those things over time, over generations. But, my expenses, I would never want to say, hey, utility company, I'm going to pay my electric bill in Bitcoin. No, I'll pay you in fiat, but I'm not going to give away my gold. I'm not going to pay my bills in gold bullion. No way, I want to hold that. Hey, Israel says good night from Mexico. Good to see everybody from beautiful Mexico. Welcome. There's one of my favorite books of all time that really paints a beautiful picture of market cycles in general. Is called Manics, Panics, and Depressions. I believe that's what it's called. Maybe somebody could Google that. If you Google that title, it'll pop up. Even if it's a little bit wrong, it's a very, very famous book. I think it's called Manics, Panics, and Depressions. And it's essentially a story, a historical story, line item by line item, of all of the major depressions, economic downturns throughout history, how they were caused. Another, I would say, more modern book on market cycles in general is by Ray Dalio, who is the CEO and founder of Bridgewater Associates, which I believe is the largest hedge fund right now. A good book was Principles by Ray Dalio, and then he had a follow-up book that really did a good job explaining market cycles. Now, if you're not a big fan of reading, he has a whole YouTube kind of video series that is very nicely done. That includes some, very easy to follow along infographics. If you just go to youtube.com, just type in Ray Dalio market cycles, you could watch that, right? How the economic machine works. That's a really, really good video to understand the fundamentals of a market cycle, right? Central banking, everything. That's a really, really good one. I would say that's probably number one. If you don't want to read something, just youtube.com, Ray Dalio, market cycles, how the economic machine works. This is an awesome view of 432 Park Avenue. And you also have Trump Tower right in front of it. Reggie44 says, would you like to see Howard Lutnick as Treasury Secretary? I think he'd do an amazing job. I mean, his track record is unbelievable. I mean, look what Howard Lutnick had to overcome with Cantor Fitzgerald through 9/11. Some CEOs have to deal with, employee turnover. Like, half my employees quit because they didn't like the company. More than half of his company were murdered in one day. And he managed to turn around the entire business. I think over 700 of his employees were murdered at one time on 9/11. He managed to turn around the company, build it into a multi-billion-dollar business while giving 25% of the profits to the victims of 9/11. So that's somebody who you could bet on. So I would say yes. And maybe he will be. You never know. I believe he is in the transition team, so to speak. Chloe says, Manias, Panics, and Crashes. Got it. That is the book. Derek says, Manias, Panics, and Crashes, A History of Financial Crises. That's it. For some reason, I thought it was Manic. Something, maybe it's on a cover of an old copy of the book. But yes, that is the book. It's a very good book. Let me get a couple more comments in here, and then we'll call it a night. Increased naturalities to Major Menace Point. Should we also be investing in Taylor Swift tickets and premium Nike sneakers? I mean, I don't care what you guys do with your money, to be blunt. Peter says, where does the recipient of the remittance of Bitcoin deposit the coin? You could just send it to a wallet, just a regular Bitcoin wallet. But it's that's kind of what makes me even more bullish. It's like, my God, because a lot of people just don't understand it still. Like, that's why when you think about Bitcoin being at 90,000 or wherever it is now, you talk to some people, and I'm not trying to say it in a mean way. I'm just trying to explain the opportunity. There's so many people still in 2024 that don't understand it, right? It's so ridiculously early. Guys, I think Bitcoin's market cap is like what? 1.5 trillion? It's nothing. If you went into the global economy and took out 1.5 trillion, nobody would notice tomorrow, okay? On a global scale, it is nothing. It is a little pissant of an asset class that I think, base case, it's probably going to take, it'll probably go to a $10 trillion asset class, just Bitcoin, over time. I believe we already flipped silver, but if you again, how many people thought that NVIDIA was going to be a $3 trillion company? We are in the exponential age. I'm not saying it's going to get there tomorrow. I'm not saying it's going to get there in 5 years. But to think that Bitcoin is roughly a 1.5, give or take, trillion dollar asset, to get to 10 trillion is not even allocating a fraction of global financial assets there. It's nothing. That's why I kind of talk about this asymmetric risk-reward profile. But we'll see. I mean, in our lifetimes, if AI is going to be all that it's cracked up to be, over 20 years, do you think NVIDIA could be a $10 trillion company? I'm not saying it's going to get there tomorrow. I'm not saying it's going to get there in the next 10 years. NVIDIA could trade down to a $1 trillion company before it goes to $7 trillion. But the TAM is there, in the exponential age. Hey, Reggie44, thank you so much for your very generous $10 donation. Appreciate it very, very much. This is a good shot of 432 Park. We'll just cross here. It's kind of cool to see the entire street blocked out for Trump. Joe says Bitcoin isn't a company, though. It doesn't really have a market cap. At best, it's a proxy for the real economy, like other gold/silver commodities. I think that's very nicely put. All right, let me fix this here. But guys, we will have to call it, not really call it a night early. We're just going to have to cut the stream short early because I started so late. But thank you all for coming out. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate each and every single one of you. These streams are quite fun, and you guys are the best. So if you enjoyed it, feel free to leave a like on the video, subscribe if you're new. We will be back live tomorrow at 8:45. If you want to sign up for our free investing newsletter, you could scan the QR code on your screen, punch in your email. If you can't scan the QR code, you could just type !news, NEWS in the chat. We publish all of our research every other Thursday right at the closing bell. And we covered a lot on Thursday. We covered a ton. So we'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a wonderful week. The best is yet to come. Patrice 2020, Andy, thank you so much. Mark Francis, Stephen Bate, Peter, Joseph Hardaway, Sunshine After Rain, Jay, Chris, New England Crypto, thank you so much. Paul Yost, Alan, all of our moderators, Padilla, thank you. Who Dat Dave, who else we got? Minus, thank you so much. Austin City Limits, Steve CR, Reggie 44, Joe, Muhammad, Mike G, Mr. 15 Central Park West, Philip, Hawaii. See you guys tomorrow.